This is Steve Zeltzer with KPFA WorkWeek Radio, and we're going to be talking in a bit with the apprentices who are helping to make this happen at this massive rally here for public education. The apprentices at KPFA play a critical role in helping to get the word out and training young people to do radio, to do media, which is critical. We want our young people to have that training so that they can use it to get their stories out of working people and people in our country. And they get that training at KPFA. But first, before we go to that, we're going to go to Rick Baum, who is with City College of San Francisco and AFT 2121, because this issue of public education is not just K through 12, but also community college, state college. You have students who are sleeping in their cars. You have teachers, professors at Cal State Hayward who are sleeping in their cars. They can't afford to pay for their health care and other benefits. And Rick, you're a faculty member at City College, and what's going on there? I understand there's been downsizing and a real threat to Community College of San Francisco.
Well, we had an accreditation crisis that started in 2012 where the college was under attack from an accreditation agency that said that the college offers high-quality instruction and provides comprehensive student services, but nevertheless got to the point where they threatened the college with closure. And that led to tremendous downsizing of the college. The enrollment decreased by about a third. The college got out of its accreditation crisis in January of 2016 or 17, I forget which year, and then they got a new administration in that is continuing the downsizing in a much bigger way than they did previously. One of the big issues at the college, which isn't talked about very much, is that there's a reservoir property that is next to the college. It's used by the students as a parking lot that's owned by the PUC, so it's public property. And the city wants to turn it over to a private developer to build predominantly market rate housing that will deprive students of parking spaces. And the administration is cooperating with this when this land should be turned over to the college, because the college has great needs for more land. It has the smallest, I think, footprint of any community college in the state.
And this privatization, I mean, City College used to have 100,000?
About over 100,000 students at one time.
100,000 students, and now what is it down to?
Probably about 60,000. I mean, part of it has to be acknowledged as due to the gentrification of San Francisco, where the city is so unaffordable for so many students that a lot of them are driven out of the city, can't continue to live there. Even if they come to Oakland, they have to deal with tremendous rent problems.
And so they also want to privatize the Balboa Reservoir, turn it over to developers. They say we need housing, so they want to turn over the public land to developers. What does that have to do with privatization going on at
Well, it's turning it, first of all, it's taking public property and giving it to a private company. The same company, Avalon, is apparently involved in a project, I think it's in Harlem, to take over a park to build housing there, so it's not inconsistent for them to do this. And certainly there's a need for more housing, but to build more luxury market rate housing that few, if any, students could ever, probably no students could afford to live in this housing, and faculty could not even afford to live in the housing because they don't make enough money. I think there's Avalon does control some property there right now, and I think rent is like $3,000 a month for a studio apartment and $4,000 for a one-bedroom apartment. I mean, that's not available. That's inaccessible to faculty, and they're going to build more of that. Now, they will sell the project by offering some affordable housing, but what affordable means is never that clarified. It often can mean much higher income, and it's not going to be accessible to the number of people who need housing. As you said before, there are teachers who are living in public assisted housing. They're on food stamps, and then you got students who are homeless.
And Steve G is with us for the Apprentices. He's which year?
Yeah. So I'm with Group 43, Dry Long So Rising. And have been with this station over a year through the apprenticeship program. It's been a great experience, great opportunity. But following up with what you were talking about, just how difficult is it, and how much of a challenge is it to have to be concerned about your housing when really you want to focus on the job, you want to focus on education, you want to focus on educating the student? And how is that creating that crisis or making it worse for you in terms of being able to engage with your students on a regular basis?
Sorry, I didn't hear all of what you said, but certainly students are under tremendous stress. I mean, the students at City College are predominantly working class students of color, and they aren't well-to-do. And I've had students who tell me they've gotten evicted and they can't come to class for a week or two because they have to find a new place to live, and that's really difficult for them. And there's just the stress. So many of the students, as is obvious, they have to work to support themselves, so they can't even attend full-time and to cover their rent and their other personal expenses. But there's lots of students at City College who are homeless. I mean, how on earth can we be living in a society as wealthy as the United States and we condemn people to homelessness when there's so much wealth available? It's inexcusable.
Exactly. Are there any support services or options for these students when I don't know, are they able to identify that they're in crisis?
Yeah, and
then find some pathway where they can get some help, at least some direction as to where they might go for help?
Yeah, and I'm not the best person to talk about this because I'm not involved in those programs. I know there are programs to help students. I know a year ago there's a survey done of hunger, and they found that a lot of students don't get enough food, and they provided means for them to get food. How many students are benefiting from that? I don't know. There are services for students who find themselves homeless. Again, I'm not familiar enough with the program to say how many students do they find homes for, so I can't really give a good answer to your question.
Understood. Because I know that sometimes it really is just about knowledge. You know, there's a knowledge deficit. What options, what opportunities actually exist in any one environment, right? So when you just spoke about the homelessness, there's that issue, but it also could be that challenge of not having the ability to afford to stay in school and what have you. And again, what options might exist, whether it's work study, what other opportunities might exist to, I'm not sure, engage in, just so that they can continue on their focus, which is to get their education when it's all said and done.
But at City College, students who are student workers, they get paid San Francisco's minimum wage. Before that, they were paid something like $10 or $11 an hour. I mean, who can live on that kind of money in San Francisco? And they can only work part-time. I mean, there just are numerous problems. Now, if you're a resident of San Francisco today, you are guaranteed free tuition. So that does help some students, but lots of students don't live in San Francisco.
Exactly.
And it's just in contrast to what we had back in the early 1980s and before then, where one could attend community college for free throughout the state. You didn't have to be a resident of a particular city, you had to be a resident of California. And given the wealth of this society, how can they have gotten rid of a program like that? And then there's problems with the Free City program that provides students with free tuition, which is that if a student after about the third week of school drops out because of job demands or something happens in their personal life, they have to pay the tuition. So that's the way this program is set up. So in other words, you drop out,
and then you
you have to pay if you drop out after 3 weeks. So it's not the kind of program that we had in California in the past. But you know, get back to your bigger question. There are great stresses that so many people are under. It's not just students, but many people in our society about getting by. And if you have to be stressed out trying to get by, it really interferes with your ability to get educated and develop your skills. And it also means that your parents are unable to provide you with support so that you can, achieve your greatest level of achievement while you're growing up as a kid. They won't have the resources to provide you, say, with books or take you to museums or something of that sort. And
that's so important, especially today, because again, we're talking about competing now on a global level. The students, we're not talking about some of the local, where we used to think more locally. Now we're in a global environment, and you're competing with students all across the world. So that ability to focus on your education, focus on your particular class or discipline that you're in, is compromised so often by some of these challenges.
Well, and I want to take issue with this notion of competition. I mean, that's what's often stressed, is that our students have to be prepared for the 21st century because they're involved in global competition. There's a book about this, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, that brings out how, yes, there's competition, but there aren't the jobs for people. So even there aren't the jobs. So if you take STEM, there's a big emphasis on STEM classes. That's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And there aren't a lot of jobs in those areas, and the companies that hire people in those areas, they're often laying off workers. They're looking for cheap labor, so they try to bring in workers from places like India rather than hiring, I don't want to be nationalistic, I think that'd be silly, but rather than hiring the trained Americans. And then what do a lot of these workers end up doing? They work for the military-industrial complex. Do we really want to train people to build more efficient bombs? Which is what a lot of the STEM education leads to. So yes, there's competition, but there's really, the bigger problem is the role of the corporations and the role of capitalism in our society and its priorities.
Okay.
And that's what really needs to be addressed.
Okay. Well, let me just kind of push back a little bit, because I'm someone who's actually a STEM. I'm a computer science major.
Okay.
I went to Skyline High School and Montero Junior High School. So I'm actually from the public school system and educated along that path of STEM. However, I believe in STEAM, so I believe the arts are definitely involved. I believe in liberal arts education. The college I attended was that. So I'm always looking to see how we can expand the opportunity for education throughout. But as a black male, I can definitely say there is a competition, not just in terms of a particular one type of job, but just in general, right?
Sure.
You know, how do you make yourself at the standard where you're on the consideration of equal footing when it comes to how are we able to exist continuously throughout society and engage on all types of levels, right? So I'm going to engage you academically. I'm going to engage you in the workforce. I'm going to engage you in the community. And that opportunity is fostered and I think augmented by these opportunities that actually exist. So even though it might not be a direct idea of competition, it exists at a level, you know.
No, I agree it exists, and you know, I think a lot of people, fortunately, have made great strides in their lives, like yourself, so that there are those jobs that are available for people, and many people are going to, as a result of getting a good education, are going to get these good-paying jobs, and you know, power to them when they're able to do so. The problem is that many people are left behind. So you have a lot of people who go to college to get this education, to be competitive. They're burdened with student debt, and many of them don't get a good paying job when they leave college. They end up working in a Starbucks or a place like that because there aren't that many opportunities available. And even people who get these good paying jobs, they often aren't that stable. They may keep them for a few years and then they got to find another job, which is the way the economy is working. Now there's alternatives. We could, for example, cut the work week to 30 hours a week.
Well, yeah,
and then provide more jobs for people through something like that.
Yeah. So we'll definitely have to get into understanding what options exist as you're talking about, and then how do we find a way to be more supportive in the current environment, whether it's a 30-hour work week or how we're going to engage in making sure some other opportunities exist for finding some jobs. Sustainable jobs, as you're saying, that are above minimum wage. So it's actually a living wage that the students would have to be able to work with to stay in school, as well as when they graduate and sort of get out. But my gosh, thank you so much. This is really great information.
If I had my way, students would get paid for going to school because they're like workers,
right?
And they're trying to improve themselves and improve society. So we as a society would benefit from students doing well in school. But that's not the mindset that we have.
Understood. Well, thank you. Again, thank you so much for being with us here at KPFA, and really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You have a good one.
Sorry if I
Hey.
We're here at KPFA and WorkWeek Radio covering this very important rally. There are thousands of people here, teachers, students from literally all over the Bay Area, staff workers from SEIU, 1021 are here, fighting for workers to have a decent public schools, a basic human right. That's what we're talking about, a basic human right to have a great education. And joining us are...
Hello, my name is Angela Drake. I am 17 years old, and I am with the Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom Center and a student at Castlemont High School.
Okay.
Castlemont, okay.
Bulky, and I do our government relations at the Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom Center. We are very happy to be here with you all this afternoon.
Thank you for joining us.
All right, thank you.
So, this issue of the struggle for Martin Luther King, what he was fighting for, it seems it's the same old story. The African American, Latino immigrants are not getting equal education. You feel that we're here again? after so many years of the struggle of Martin Luther King?
This is just a real example of what it means to continue the work, and that's what we're doing. Martin Luther King passed us the baton on, and it's our job to keep going and keep pushing and keep fighting.
Dr. King, really said that the most important thing we need to be doing in our lives is create units of power, our ability to organize across lines of difference and in a unifying way, building the beloved community. And what's beautiful about today is you see teachers and administrators and district people, elected officials, parents, students, we're out here together saying, you know what? Education is key for democracy. You cannot have a healthy democracy if there is not equity. And you're absolutely right. Our schools are not equitable. Our students of color and our low-income students consistently do not have access to the quality education that they deserve and that we have a constitutional right to have. We have a constitutional right to vote and to speak, and our schools are not preparing us to do that. So we know that funding for education is absolutely critical in the environment we're living in today. And let's face it, elections don't work, democracy doesn't work if we don't even understand the role of government and how civics function. Schools are the key to that. So we're here today to say absolutely yes to increase funding for education, and looking forward to working hard with everybody that's out today to make sure that our young people are the priority for our state going forward.
So how would again, in speaking of the Martin Luther King Center, how do you engage, and what is your emphasis and focus to help along the educational path?
So we focus on civic engagement and civic education and voter education, because it's super important that our young people are aware of that, because that's how democracy functions, by voting and getting your voice out and being part of the solutions and voting to be at the end of the day. And it's super, super important that our young people are getting that in the schools, because that's where we're learning. And if we're not learning in the schools about voting, then how are we going to do that when we get outside of the school system? So
at what age do you all sort of engage, or maybe what grade level do you try to engage understanding, knowledge, start building that energy as you move towards, as these students, on that matriculation and on that arc of moving towards being able to vote? When does it start for you all?
We are an intergenerational organization, and we do work with the high schools to get volunteers with the teachers and the administration, and we are keeping an open pipeline so that everybody can come in and out and keep it.
So we have relationships with teachers and school personnel that help us nominate students with emergent leadership skills. And then in just a minute, Angela's going to say a word about kind of our residential programming that runs year-round. We're located at Merritt College. It's a beautiful collaboration with the Peralta Community College District and Merritt in particular. That's where our offices are located. We have classes every Saturday. And our classes are very much infused with the writings and the teachings, the life and legacy of Dr. King. So Angela, maybe you could say a few words about the residential aspect.
So we are all year-round program, and we do have different sections of our program where it takes, like the summer program, we have a summer program and we have a winter program, and those are like the more residential pieces that we have, where we're learning about the life and legacy of Dr. King and the philosophy of nonviolence, and really understanding what it means to get civic. And I think that's super important, because a lot of people don't get that time outside of the classroom to really indulge and engage in education and what it means to really learn how to learn, and really teaching yourself how to unlearn certain things and pick up certain things and do certain things differently. And that's what civic engagement teaches us, and I think that's super important.
Good. Okay, well, I want to thank you both for joining us, and forward and onward in the struggle of Martin Luther King for justice and human rights.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks to KPFA. Great to be here today.
Great. Okay,
Onward.
thank you. Onward. So, as I said, the defense of the public schools in Oakland and around the country is also a defense of the service workers, the staff workers who actually serve the food, who keep the schools clean, who really keep the schools functioning. And many of these staff workers are critical to the functioning of education. And we're here with the president of the local SIU 1021 chapter here of the schools. Welcome. What's your name? Yes.
I'm Betty Reed Smith.
Betty Reed Smith is here. And
Deneva Reed.
okay, so welcome to KPFA Workweek Radio. Why is it important for all working people to be here, and what is the role of staff workers in the protection of our public schools?
I represent the classified employees of the district, and that means I represent administrative assistants, technology, payroll department. I also represent SSOs, the security of the schools. I represent instructional assistants, and we're in every department in the Oakland schools.
And without your role, there would be no Oakland schools.
There will be no Oakland schools because the people that I represent are the folks that keep the school together. We are the laborers of the district because of what we do.
You're the backbone of the schools.
We are the backbone of the schools.
And
yes.
I know that one of the issues is that they're closing public community schools and opening up these charters. Are there any of your members in these charter schools?
No.
Why not?
Are not in the charter schools. We feel that the same education that they say that they're going to get in the charter schools, that we can provide right here in the Oakland public schools. And so our members, and they're non-represented, charter schools are non-represented by unions.
Well, why is that? They don't want the unions?
They don't want the unions.
They don't believe in unions.
They don't. They do not believe in unions. Billionaires backing their efforts to keep us, to tear down the school system. So when we came to the open enrollment session of the schools, where it was common that if you could choose public or you could choose charter, it became an issue, especially, I think, to the people, because now you're out campaigning for charter, which is why would Bloomberg decide to back different members of the school board in order to bring charters into Oakland schools? So the sense is, we made them public.
So you have these billionaires opening up privately run schools and saying they don't want service workers to be unionized. I guess they want more money for themselves. Huh?
Definitely, I guess. So,
they got lots of money and they want more.
And they want more. And they want more.
And your members don't make a lot of money.
We do not.
We're struggling to survive as the teachers are struggling to survive.
And to stay in the Bay Area and live here is very much a struggle. Our children attend the public schools. Most of our children attend. I had my children attend, my grandchildren attend open schools.
Do you think that the labor movement, the union, should really say enough is enough?
We should say enough is enough.
In this rich state, we have enough. Okay, this is Steve Zeltzer with KPFA Workweek Radio, and I'm also with one of our apprentices here.
Hey, this is Stevie G with Group 43, Dry Long So Rising with the First Voice Apprenticeship Program for KPFA. So this is a fantastic day, a fantastic and very, very important opportunity to really support education in all of its facets and phases and moving forward.
We're with a very important student, Arnett Odrin, and she's with the Coliseum College Pro Academy, and she's a senior there. And what's going on at your school, Arnett?
So what's going on at our school is that we're getting budget cuts. So we're trying to fight for more funding for the students at the school. And me, since I'm a senior, I'm not going to be there next year, but I want to make sure that all of the students that comes after me gets the education that they deserve.
And how long have you been at the school?
I've been at the school since I was in the 8th grade, so I've been there for about 5 years now.
And why are they trying to hurt your school with these budgets? Because, the students there need more support, not less support. What are they saying to you? What are they telling you?
They're saying that there's not enough money in the budget to keep funding these programs. Like at my school, we don't even have music programs, but we do have a lot of sports. And And
You don't have music programs, or
No, we don't.
how could you not have music programs in your school?
I guess it's not in the budget.
But isn't music a way of expression for young people?
It is.
I mean, it's like it's part of.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Because
school.
I'm a musician myself, so I'm very passionate about it. But my school, we don't have music programs, so we have to go like outside of school to find these certain programs of what the students really want to do, other than just sports.
And I mean,
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you
well,
off
I
there,
mean,
Steve.
it seems strange in this rich state in California. You have all these billionaires, you have all this money, and you can't afford music programs for our young students.
Yeah.
I mean, what is going on? Why?
To be honest, I really don't know. Like, they're saying that we don't have enough money to fund all of the programs that we really want to do. And like the classrooms, they're like super packed in, like up to 32 students. And it's harder for people to focus inside of those bigger classrooms because the teacher can't give that one-on-one support that they want to.
Wow. So let's take a step back real quick. So I know that STEM has been a big focus for a
Yeah.
while, the science, technology, engineering, and math. And what you're talking about, and of course you as a musician, we're talking about that A that's missing, maybe STEAM,
Yeah.
where we would say the arts and have that
Yeah.
included there. So what has been your experience, though? You said you've been there since the 8th grade.
Yeah.
What have you gained? You know, what have you seen in yourself, your own personal growth in being with the school?
Well, what I've seen is that my school pushes me to like get out of my comfort zone because my school is very STEM heavy. So we have a lot of science and technology, and we're also very involved in social activism and like social injustices and all of that. And we're also correlated with building businesses at the same time. So our school gets to a lot of things. It's just not a lot that a lot of the students are interested in.
All right, and so then how did you find your way? How did you find your way to music? How did you find your way there?
I talked to the counselor at my school,
Okay.
and she helped me find a music program that's outside of the school. But sometimes I wish it was in school,
Right.
so that way I can have like my friends there with me who also love music, and so we could actually have like a bond through the school because the school is very separated.
And have you had rallies there to defend the school? Or any kind of protest to say, don't shut our school?
Well, I'm here today for that.
So you brought yourself here to get your voice out.
Yeah.
That this school needs to be protected, and you need to have the voices of people.
Yeah.
To protect your school.
Yeah.
And you want this for the future.
Yeah.
So young people have these cultural programs, art programs. Well, this idea of STEM, nothing is wrong with that, but
But it's just you need the A.
you need the arts,
Yeah.
and that's a critical thing. So thanks for joining us,
Yeah.
and we hope you're successful in keeping the school and getting proper funding in the school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on KPFA radio with the Apprentices. Stevie G is the co-host, and we're talking about education, the defense of education, and also at a rally of thousands of people to defend public education, basic human right, and why we have to struggle today in 2019 to get a good education in California is crazy. With all the money and wealth in the state, we should have the best education in the world.
You got
And
that
also
right.
joining us,
Karen Monroe, the Alameda County Superintendent of Schools.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, and in full disclosure, we know each other a little bit, so. And you can't hear anything?
maybe
So-
try the other.
Okay, so
No, it'll just-
so again, we just want to welcome Karen Monroe, again, the superintendent of Alameda County in education, and so
Yes.
that is just fantastic. The
Yeah.
fact that you're here today and being able to speak and sort of express and give that perspective of what's actually happening here. So, how have you seen things so far today, and the importance of what this means?
So this is an amazing day. The energy is amazing, and I just got to share with the folks here our great hope for not only for today, but for a greater movement. What is possible through this movement is actually to affect some of the things you were just talking about. So I was a a student, a public school student in Berkeley. I was a teacher and a principal in Oakland. My mother was a teacher, and my grandmother was a preschool teacher in Oakland. When we prioritized education, my father grew up in Oakland, had free childcare, had after-school meals.
How long ago was that? Free childcare,
A while ago. It was in the late 40s.
So, I mean, we used to have things that
people
we should
don't
have
even
to,
know
we used
that
to have
this
things
used to
that
exist.
people had in the past.
That's right.
When this was a poor state, it's a rich state, and you don't
That's
even
right.
have childcare. I mean,
That's right.
We've gone back instead of forward.
We have in many ways, in many, many ways.
So then along those lines then, what type of support services and options exist now where students or parents can start to engage maybe outside of what they might know directly, maybe from the school? What could they partake of, in terms of extra educational opportunities, like the young lady who was just here with us was talking about not having arts in her school?
Yes.
How could that be in this day and age in Northern California that students don't have music and arts in their own school?
Right.
That should be illegal. You would think that is really a crime against young people not to have arts.
It's something we fight against every day. It
Well, why
absolutely
does
is.
that
The
happen?
Alameda
How could
County
that
Office of
happen?
Education, we do a lot with arts education, and schools are forced to make these decisions that they shouldn't. Do we only have a particular budget? Do we hire a math teacher or an intervention specialist, or do we have arts for our kids? There are decisions that they should not be forced to make. Certainly decisions I had to make as a school principal. I never was able to have a counselor in the school, and mental health was an enormous need in the community I serve.
And these kids need counselors.
Absolutely. It shouldn't be something extra. It should actually be what every child has access to and that they have a right to have.
We're talking about the survival of the child. This child
Absolutely.
have emotional problems, health problems, their parents have problems.
And we know about the trauma in our communities, so it shouldn't be extra. So if we all come together, and we know what speaks not only in Sacramento but in Washington is a coalition. We know that a relentless drumbeat of the need for more funding, nothing short of that is going to do. It's not separate little visits, it's not my particular issue. It's that we need to fund our education system as we used to do.
And there's also the issue of charters, because in Oakland they are opening up new charters while they're closing public community schools, and also charters have been disapproved and then the State Board of Education approved them. Has that happened in Alameda County?
Yes, and you may know, just also full disclosure, Alameda County Office of Education is the appellate body, so a lot of charters will come to the Alameda County Board of Education, and the board has to decide whether they're going to approve or deny, and often if they deny, then charters go to the state. But it is a complicated issue. It absolutely is, because we have parents, if you're looking at Oakland alone, who have kids who are in traditional public schools, kids who are in charter schools, kids who, and so parents are making these decisions based on the needs that they see. Does that school have a counselor? Does that school have resources? Do they have the arts? And so what we need to make sure is that all of our schools, all of our district schools have those resources and can provide the kind of education all of our parents are looking for.
Well, the charter schools, a lot of them, it's been charged, are segregated. They're mostly Latino or African American. There's a resegregation. The NAACP, as I mentioned earlier, is calling for a moratorium on new charters. Are you in favor of a moratorium on new charters?
I don't know that I would call for a moratorium. I definitely think we need to take a look at the rate we're approving charters. I absolutely think it's time to stand back and look at the rate we're approving charters.
So along some of these lines that you're talking about, what are ways for, if I'm a parent, how do I get more information?
Yeah.
If I'm a student, where do I might ask to get some more information,
Right.
so I can learn and understand what context, what environment I'm in, so I can start to make some of the choices that you're talking about?
So this coalition that we're looking to build, that's part of it. It's
Okay.
got to include student voices. It's got to include parent voices. Today, we have the energy and the passion and the organization and the action of teachers and teachers' labor unions. Sprinkled in here are some administrators and some board members and some others, but it's going to take the full force of each of those groups. So the school board member groups has to step up, and they already have been in that this is their single issue too, school funding. Parents parents groups, whether it's or in Oakland, OCO, other organizations need to step up and say, this is what we're going to lend our voice to. We are going to make sure that our public schools have the funding that they need and are not needing to fight or scrape after the same dollars, that we're fighting amongst each other.
And the richest state in the world with all these billions.
Fifth largest economy in the world. And the tragedy of it is a lot of our students who are educated here, because they don't have access to the resources they need, can't take advantage of the opportunities in California, the opportunities to be in the digital economy and have those jobs. And so that's what we want.
Well, there used to be the master plan in California. And you used to have the greatest schools in California. I mean, in the 60s.
That's when my mom was a teacher.
And that's really what we need. We need the greatest schools in the world, and we can have them.
We absolutely do. I mean, as the fifth, we're not the fifth largest economy in the United States, in the world.
That's right.
And so when we're looking at a lot of the people who are in those jobs coming from, other states and other countries, then we know that, we can't afford to waste a minute. We really can't.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So along those lines, and how, if you're someone, like for instance, all my children are now out, right?
Yes,
So I've got
too.
2 in college, but none of them are part of the school system as of today. So how would I engage? Where is my energy maybe best served in trying to engage and improve education for the county? How would
I think that brings up a really good point, because I've talked about students, I've talked about school board members, and administrators, and teachers, but actually those civic organizations, those places, faith-based organizations, that's also a place we need to be reaching out, because if people don't have children, they have grandchildren, they have nieces, they have nephews, and anyone who knows anything about education knows that it is the single most important lever for impacting a community. And if you care about your community, you have to care about education.
Okay, well, I want to thank you very much for joining us, and obviously this is an ongoing struggle to make our schools great. And we should be having great schools in California.
Absolutely.
So thank you for joining us on KPFA
Thank you so much.
Radio, WorkWeek Radio, with the Apprentices. Thanks for joining us. And our next speaker is going to be another worker in education. She's Lisa Milos, and Lisa is a member of CWA UPTE, University Professional Technical Employees. And it turns out that there are thousands and thousands of UC workers who are also struggling to survive. And you want to put that on? Yeah. Put the headphones on. Yeah, put that on. And they are also without a contract. AFSCME 3299, 20,000 workers, and the CWA UPTE workers. Welcome to WorkWeek Radio, Lisa.
Thank you for having me. I'm a rank and file member of UPTE. I'm a medical interpreter at UCSF Medical Center.
And one of the things we've been discussing here is privatization, the attack on public education in California. What does that have to do with what's going on in UC and the struggle of the UC workers for justice and for a good contract and good conditions?
Well, what we're seeing across the board is this kind of like this push towards privatization. And one of the main things that they've been attacking, at UC has been attacking workers at UC about has been the retirement issue. They've been trying to privatize our pension. There's a lot of things that have to do with that. And in relation to education is that they keep on increasing the cost of the education
So young people have to go into debt to get an education now.
Right, they have to go into debt to get an education, and they also, in terms of the medical issues, the costs that are related that workers have to pay in order to get medical care are also increasing, and in particular, specifically related to what is happening with UPTE is that UC wants to take away the cap on any increase in healthcare costs to the 15,000 workers who are involved in healthcare, in both RX, which is the research unit, which involves a lot of education as well. Because without the research unit, and without the educators and without the research, these big pharmaceutical companies would not be making any money, right? Because who trains and teaches the pharmacist and teaches the students to become top scientists and stuff like that? Who does it? It's the teachers. And who actually makes sure that UC is a top-notch university in terms of research are the researchers.
And the other thing that we're talking about, the billionaires running California, and you have some billionaires on the regents at the University of California. Richard Blum, who's married to Dianne Feinstein, and apparently he's been involved in, he and other regents have been involved in transferring your pension money to their own businesses to make money off of the employees' pension money.
Well,
and that's, and you're in a struggle with Fidelity. Why they're trying to privatize your pension? Is that the case?
Well, what's going on is the UC Regents, we've had this pension for quite some time. It's actually a public pension. The UC Regents had decided to not fund it for like 20 years when the so-called stock market was in the boom, so they didn't fund it. And then they started saying, well, it's underfunded, so they're trying to create what's this opt-out version, which would have new workers coming in, not paying into that one, but rather into Fidelity investments into a 401k, which would weaken the public pension, number one. But the most egregious thing about this is that we have a member on the UC Regents whose name is Kiefer, whose main client of his law firm happens to be Fidelity, and he's the one that actually introduced the opt-out version to go and favor his own client, which is a very serious issue of conflict of interest in my opinion.
So isn't that self-dealing? I mean, isn't it a financial conflict of interest if you have regents who are appointed by the governor of California actually having a financial incentive to privatize your pension plan, get rid of the defined pension benefit?
I would say so. It's my opinion, yes. I would say so, but the other thing is that Fidelity is also screwing us over, and excuse my language, I'm sorry, is also messing with us in many other respects as well, because they're charging exorbitant fees, We're talking about sometimes even 6,000% higher than the regular other asset management companies. And there's, you know how everything is connected?
Right.
You know how everything's connected? These retirement plans, even our pension plan has Fidelity charging fees. They've made, since 2006, they've made $1 billion since 2006. They've made $1 billion of from our money that went to Fidelity.
So
$1 billion.
Wow. So how do you communicate to your members? How do you educate them on the options and some of what's happening, as you're mentioning, Fidelity making $1 billion off of that directly from you all? Where does it start with the workers and understanding more?
Well, we held some interesting workshops that were carried out by someone by the name of Matthew Cunningham Cook, who is a labor researcher, and he put out a document called Fidelity to Whom, which is a really interesting document, which basically specifies exactly how workers are being shafted by Fidelity. And that's both within our pension as well as within, especially within the so-called defined contribution plans, which are the privatized plan. When you have a defined benefit, you know what you're going to be getting at the end, right? Or you know relatively well what you're going to be getting at the end, right? But when you have a defined contribution plan, you're just putting in money, and you're the one that's running all the risks, and they're the ones that don't have no risk because they're getting their money anyways. Now, Chile, which was the country of my mother, they already did that during the dictatorship. They imposed privatization of retirement funds, and they already, basically Chile was a test tube for all these billionaires to do whatever they want, and they're trying to do the same thing here that they did in Chile. 45 years later, we have teachers who were teaching for 25 years in Chile who are basically starving and out in the street in Chile because their retirement funds did not cover their risk, you know, and they were completely shafted by the privatized retirement system, you know, in Chile. So we've already have experiences in other countries about what this privatization does and the schemes that they have.
And your union is now without a contract for how long?
Since, my union has been without a contract since October 31st, 2017, and the
so we're in 2019, and your union's been without a contract for 2017.
So far, we've done 2 strikes in solidarity with AFSCME, May and in October, and right now we're in the mediation process. So that's what's gonna.
And why aren't you going out with the teachers in Los Angeles and Oakland? Don't you think you should have a united strike for all public workers?
I couldn't answer that for you, but
in my
opinion,
yes,
I think we should do that.
If public workers in California don't have contracts,
right?
I mean, over a year now.
Yeah.
Why aren't they all going out together?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question.
I mean, they're
yeah.
facing the same attack on their pensions, their benefits.
We're facing
Right.
the
Why
same
not
attack.
go out together? I mean, this is a question I think public workers need to ask.
Yeah, because
They're facing the same
we're
attack.
basically the public workers that are fighting right now. We're the last stand of public workers who are unionized. We're the last stand, and if we don't make a stand, we're done for. You know, so we need to make a united stand.
Right. So
And
then
the-
along those lines, then it would seem that the collaboration efforts that you're talking about, Steve, in terms of trying to understand what are our different bodies, and then where we strategically might decide to sort of, collect and collectively say, this is the fight we want to have, and we want to approach it from this angle versus another one.
Right, right. Well, that's the conversation that needs to happen, and I'm not sure it's. I don't think it's happening on the broadest level possible. I think that rank and file workers, we need to be more involved and more in conversation with each other, more so than just listening to what our leaders say.
Right.
Even though some leaders might be in the right, other ones might be kind of not very correct in their strategies, but they need to be challenged, and we need to challenge them about that.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for joining us on KPFA WorkWeek
Thank you.
Radio on this rally for public education. UC is part of the fight for public education.
yes.
We've
Oh,
got to
yes.
have a great education system for the workers and for the students and for the staff. So thanks for
Exactly.
joining us.
Thank you so much.
KPFA WorkWeek Radio. And we're here at this rally. There are thousands of teachers, parents, students here who want a future. They want a public education. They want a great public education.
Right.
California has the money to have a great public education.
Exactly. So why not take and make it available to everyone at all options and all different ways?
I mean, we were talking earlier about they used to have child care in California
Right.
for young people, and
Yes.
yet we don't have that now. I mean, this is a question that people in California have to ask. Why are we going backward and not forward as far as what we need to have? So our next guest is on this show is Diablo Education Association. Johnson, Arnita Johnson, who's the president of the association. Welcome to KPFA WorkWeek Radio and the special program in this election. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
So why don't you talk about why you're here today, the issues that brought you and your members here to this important public education rally in Oakland, California.
I am here because for the 20 years that I've been working in education, I have known that we have not really been giving our students the support that we need. I started out as a math teacher in a middle school, 37 students in a class, 212 students every day. And I just found that I was not able to give them the attention that they needed, especially the young girls that were afraid to ask questions, and any of the students that were being bullied. I was not able, there just was not enough time in the day for me to support them. And I really felt that I was letting them down, and realized that it wasn't a deficiency on my part, but that the state is not meeting our responsibility to today's children.
And you think California, the wealth that it has in this state, it could have a great education. You don't have the funding.
We do not have the funding. Even though California, there's 144 billionaires, and their combined wealth.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
144
Billionaires.
in California.
And their combined
I
wealth
think
makes.
people need to hear that.
Yeah.
144 billionaires in California, and you cannot do the best education process that you want.
We're letting our students down. That's right, yes.
So
Yeah.
how does the Mount Diablo Education Association, how do you seek to increase your funding or encourage other opportunities to gain options and abilities to move forward in education with students?
Well,
Where do you go?
we are the teachers union for the Mount Diablo Unified School District.
Okay.
So 30,000 students, 1,700 teachers, and we have, at the bargaining table, we always fight for as much funding as we can get. As close to the classroom as possible. And we look at the district's budget very carefully, and we are of one mind with them right now, which is that they are simply not getting enough money from the state. It's not about districts not managing their money well. It's just simply the state is not meeting its responsibilities.
Are there any problems as well about charters in your district, a growing infiltration of charter schools?
No, we just have the one charter, and we have been pretty effective at getting the word out that that is not an appropriate education for children, because it It's just we need to support all of our public schools because the charter schools drain funding away from the
And
public
I
schools.
understand part of the draining funding is also a lot of the charter schools do not pay into the CalSTRS pension plan, which means that it's underfunded, and it's if there's $5 billion going into charters in California, maybe more, and that means less money going to firm up the CalSTRS pension plan, which means they're cost shifting to a lot of the teachers. Is that a problem?
That is a huge problem, and the bigger problem is in terms of the special education students. As you probably know that the average funding per student is around $15,000 now. Some special education students will cost around $100,000 to really educate that student. These are students with severe disabilities in wheelchairs, need a lot of nursing support, so $100,000. And charter schools have ways to make sure that those students are not enrolled in their schools, so they're overrepresented in our public schools, which is a huge drain on funding.
Okay.
So then with the interactions you've had with the state, what are you looking to do to encourage, gather more opportunities directly from the states?
It needs to be a relentless drumbeat from all of the stakeholders now, which we are very glad to see that the California School Boards Association is supporting full and fair funding, as is the Administrators Association. And we are continuing to work to let the public know. And the important thing is to pass the Community and Schools First Act, which will reform Proposition 13 and make sure that corporations pay their fair share of corporate property taxes.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us on KPFA WorkWeek Radio. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
This is important to have a great education process, and we need more funding to do that. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It was fun.
On KPFA. So, why don't you introduce yourself?
Upella, a singing group that's supporting the rally today.
And you have Songs for California Educators Rising here.
Yes.
Nice.
I think you need music.
The subtitle there is Singing Movements Win and Winning Movements Sing, and we have found that to be true, and we're happy to help in that regard. So we put online at our website a whole sheaf of songs written especially for California Teachers and Educators Rising, hoping people will sing because it does really bring people together, and we know that it has a special power, and we need all the power we can get to fight this fight.
And the students' voices as well.
Absolutely, yes.
Young people love to sing, and we learned during the course of this programming that they've taken away arts, music, and arts from schools.
Yes, well,
I mean, that's a disgusting, despicable thing. When in California, you get rid of arts and music in your schools?
That's part of our fight. When we say that schools our children deserve, that's part of our fight. I'm a music teacher, but I have worked for 40 years in Oakland Public Schools on hook and crook funding because it's K through 5, which I work with. Vocal music is not funded. So I have to, get soft money every year. But I thoroughly support this strike and the union because it's in that kind of work that we're going to get the schools we deserve with arts.
Especially young people who are poor, African American, Latino, an expression, a critical way of expressing their struggles, their lives, is through art and music.
Yeah.
I mean, if they can't get into math, they can do their art and the music, and that's an expression in which they can come forward and really contribute. And
right. I just want to.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah. I'm Hallie Hammer. I'm singing with Bonnie. I just want to say that what happens is they take away the arts, the music, the sports programs from the schools, and kids with money can go out and do these anyway.
Right.
And kids who that's their whole thing. They're missing it. Then they don't have anywhere to channel their energies, so they end up angry and make mistakes, and they end up in jail, and that's the fodder for the whole system.
And the prisons. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of money in California. There's more money spent in California on prisons than there is on education.
Yeah, schools, not jails, is not an empty slogan. It's the truth of what's happening to our kids.
Absolutely. So I want to thank you for joining us. And again, it's Songs for California Educators Rising. You can get this and you can start singing in your classrooms and in the schools. And I'm sure if there's a strike here, you'll be on the picket lines.
Absolutely.
With your music.
Before, during, and probably after.
Okay, well, thanks for
hold on
joining
a second,
us.
just real quick. Just before you leave, can we just hear maybe a verse of a song? Maybe just a small couple of words?
One verse?
Yeah.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Something.
Which one? Oh.
Ain't gonna let
Nobody
turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking. Gonna
we go. That's what we want to hear. Thank you.
We need
Thank
those
you.
voices.
Sing along.
Sing along. Okay, well, we're now going to go into another area of our struggle, and this struggle that we've been talking about all this afternoon about defending public services, defending public education, is also about public workers in California and the attack that public workers are facing. And, for working people, when there's a strike of the teachers, it's not just about the teachers who are under attack, it's about all of us. And I think that this is a critical question. So why don't you sit down? Oh, okay. So we're joined this afternoon with Sheryl Thornton, and she's an activist in SEIU 1021, and Felicia Jones, who is also in SEIU 1021, and they're fighting against privatization, outsourcing. They're fighting for the defense of public services, which are critical. So welcome to KPFA WorkWeek Radio.
Hi, yes, my name is Sheryl Thornton, and I work for the San Francisco Health Department. And I'm here today in solidarity with my brothers and sisters, the teachers. I am here to stand with them to protest the privatization of public services. This same fight is going on in public health and all other public services. I believe that the charter school system is fueling the gentrification in our neighborhoods, and it's pushing marginalized people out. It also is, there's no education justice. We need economic justice, education justice. And so because of that, and because of my struggle with SEI, with my job, I'm running for Vice President of Representation for SEIU 10-1. I believe that we are not getting adequate representation currently, and public services, our public work is under attack. So that's why I'm running for this position, and I stand with the teachers.
So Sheryl, thanks for coming in, and also Felicia, why don't you
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Felicia Jones, and I am a member of SEIU 1021, a shop steward and a COPE delegate. I'm also an activist in the community who have started Justice for Mario Woods Coalition, Wealth and Disparities in the Black Community, Justice for Mario Woods Coalition, and also I'm running for Social and Economic Justice Chair of SEIU 1021. Why is that so important? Well, it's important because with every member in SEIU 1021, whatever the issue is, falls under the umbrella of social and economic justice. And we need a powered up union, not a powered down union.
Yes.
So when you vote for us, you vote for change. Also, the thing is also that we must address wholeheartedly is erase racism of black workers in the city and county of San Francisco, who is the lowest paid workers of all ethnicities in the city of county of San Francisco. I have worked with the Sheriff's Department 10.5 years. 8 of those years has been total harassment, retaliation, blackballing, and I am not the only one who's experiencing this. And because we're single, because of the high economics in San Francisco, we have to continue to go to work and fight against all these demises that these managers and the heads of department have. So again, my name is Felicia Jones. I'm running for Social and Economic Justice Chair. A vote for us is a vote for change. And we also support the teachers, because all of us who are union members, we also are community members. Power to the people.
Power to the people.
And this issue of gentrification and racism, it seems like they want to drive African American, Latino people out of the Bay Area, go
Yes.
someplace else.
Yes.
And they're actually illegally discriminating against African Americans. There were these hearings in San Francisco. What happened? You spoke at that hearing, Felicia. What happened there?
Well,
what did people learn?
We're working with Supervisor Sandra Fuhrer, and it is, again, a hearing is just a hearing. And so unless the people get behind
What happened?
the campaign.
What happened at that hearing? What did people
Well,
say?
the hearing is, again, when I went up to speak, I had to tell all the Board of Supervisors to put their phones down stop, working on their computers, because we were here to talk about our suffering and pain. And the main thing that you can do is give us enough respect to look at us. And so therefore, if they can't do that, then what are they really doing? So I am working with some of the supervisors, trying to push them to come and say, we support you, and not just say it in words, but really mean it.
Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit earlier about the community getting behind you. How would the community engage you? How do they get information? Where to support you? How does the community engage?
The community can engage me. My phone number is 650-245-5396. I have 2 emails. One is hopepreservation@yahoo.com, HOPEPRESERVATION @yahoo.com. The other email that you will always get an answer is mwjusticenow@gmail.com. mwjusticenow@gmail.com. And I will guarantee you will get an answer back.
And I can be reached, Sheryl Thornton, at 415-374-5100. I'm also on Facebook, Sheryl Thornton. And my email address is SherylThornton@sbcglobal.net. And as Felicia said, you'll definitely get a response.
And Sheryl, this issue of privatization and outsourcing, how is that? I mean, when you're talking about the young kids here who are not getting a good education, it seems the Hills, the rich kids get a great education. The young kids get no music, no art. They get jails. They end up on the street in jails. And yet it seems in San Francisco, the city and county of San Francisco, they're targeting African-American Latino workers. And what's going on? I mean, San Francisco, the quote-unquote liberal city?
Yes, I was a worker of 28 years. I was attacked for being a whistleblower, and I was subjected to retaliation, discrimination, harassment. I was removed from my community, a marginalized community where I've helped a lot of young kids get to college.
That's the Potrero Hill Neighborhood Center.
The Potrero Hill Neighborhood Center. There was no reason for me to be removed. The only reason I believe I was removed is because I was a whistleblower, and because of the gentrification. They're driving us out. They're taking leaders out of the community. So there's no mentors in the community to help the young people who need these connections to get into the workforce.
And Nikki Callahan, the Human Resources Director in San Francisco, what responsibility does she have of what's going on? Felicia?
She has the responsibility to be fair, have justice and equality for all workers in the city and county of San Francisco, which she does not. There's EEO complaints, just hundreds and hundreds of EEO complaints, and they all come back. We cannot investigate this.
Isn't that their job?
Yes, but to the fact that one young lady, she was called the N-word, and their response to her was saying being called the N-word one time does not justify an investigation. So
Really?
this is 2018, okay, and being called that doesn't justify an investigation, doesn't justify you pulling that director, that manager in and reading him the riot act. It doesn't justify. So, we have a problem. And one of the things you said, Steve, I want to address is that San Francisco is a liberal city. Well, San Francisco, the Golden City by the Bay, supposedly is a liberal city. Supposedly, they have all Democrats. They mostly all are Democrats on the Board of Supervisors. You have Democrats in the Assembly. You have Democrats in the Senate. And so what is it? Well, I'm going to tell you what it is. San Francisco is a racist city against black and brown people. And that is the one thing that we must address. We must address the racism that exists in the city and county of San Francisco against black and brown people, especially black people, because we are the ones who are hurting the most across the board.
So with that said, if I'm a worker and I'm not sure where to go, and I know you all just mentioned your contact information, what other opportunities or ways in which I can engage to try to find some support or find a way. So, because obviously, as long as we're isolated and individuals dealing with the issue, then they've won. But if we can somehow build that coalition out, then we have an opportunity. So where would I go? Who would I talk to? Am I moving it up through the union? Am I moving it through the union and also there's a parallel path with that in which I'm engaging on some other ways?
Well, I think it's a parallel path with the union, because the union is also supposed to represent community, because as I indicated before, members are the community. The other way you can begin to work on building a coalition is to work with me, and what I have is Mario Wood's coalition, Wealth and Disparities in the Black Community. You know, as I said, the email is mwjusticenow@gmail.com.
Okay.
And if anyone is interested in working on these issues, then contact us, and we'll be more than happy to work with you.
There should be thousands of SEIU members here. I know we interviewed earlier some SEI service workers here in the schools, but I mean, the SEIU has 54,000 members.
Right.
They need to unite with the teachers. We're all in the same fight.
Yes.
I mean, we need a united movement. On Martin Luther King Day, we need 100,000 working people.
Yes.
I mean, this is, it's something like millions of working people are in the Bay Area. They need to get united. They need to unite their power. And when the teachers go out here, the teachers go out in Los Angeles, 33,000 teachers. This isn't just about the teachers. This is about all working people. It's about young people. Instead of going to jail, they need to have a future.
Right.
They need to have a decent education.
Steve, I want to go back to a point about Mickey Callahan and DHR and the responsibility. I was recently at the Civil Service Commission, and there was a man there, and he was called Buckwheat. He worked for the PUC, and they called him Buckwheat. He reported it to the EEO. They threw his complaint in the garbage can. He was harassed, retaliated against, and finally he had to retire from the department. Well, last week they just, after he presented at the Civil Service Commission, they decided to open his investigation, but we're not sure what good that's going to do because he's retired. But again, as Felicia said, he was this black man was called Buckwheat, just like this woman was called the N-word, and they told him one time is not sufficient to cause a hostile work environment. This is what black workers are being subjected to in the city and county of San Francisco, and it's got to stop. We are under attack. This is part of the push and move to move us out of San Francisco, and we must stand together with our brothers and sisters in solidarity.
And use our communication organs.
I just would like to address, if I may, Steve, the issue around the Martin Luther King March. And for me, it's just like the Martin Luther King breakfast that's going to also be coming up, sponsored by the Labor Council of San Francisco. Now, on January 21st, at the Labor Council breakfast, you're going to see every politician there is in the state of California, mainly, at this breakfast. My issue is you come out once a year and you say you support what Martin Luther King stood for. But when the day ends, or when that 2-hour breakfast is over, then we go back to business as usual.
Well, you have Trump in office. Millions of people should be in the street.
Right.
Millions of people should be in the street.
Exactly.
And our union should be mobilizing them to get in the street.
Exactly.
You have an open racist who terrorizes people, who calls the press scum, who is encouraging racists. I mean, it seems like the unions need to be on the forefront. We're gonna kick him out. We're gonna defend our lives, because every life is under threat.
Right.
Yeah,
with these attacks.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be the unions. It's going to be the communication arms that exist. And it's going to be a consistent, really, just the two examples you all mentioned about being called buckwheat, the N-word. I mean, in progressive areas, I've heard it used quite a bit as well. So it's how do we uncover what's been covered up and show that, reveal it, shine that light on it in all avenues, whether it's Protest 45 in terms of what's going on, whether it's the administration and what they're doing, and in as many ways as possible, uncover that, reveal it, and start to show and push these things out. And again, with the coalition building, the collaboration and moving forward, it should be a way to help.
Well,
support each other.
I want to thank. Why don't you read? We're wrapping it up now, but I want to thank you for joining us. We need a united struggle, and that includes all public workers, all young people. It's the future. It's our future.
Yes, it is.
So we have to work together to do that.
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Thank you for inviting
so much.
us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, KPFA, out here dealing with education, supporting education in all of its facets and ways. And we want to make sure that we thank everybody who's been able to appear as a guest on the show. Thank you, Steve, and thank you for sharing allowing me to share with you. This has been fun.
It's been great, and I think we need to do more of this. We need to have a channel, a streaming channel, so these important, critical public events are seen by everyone. And that will make all of us better if we can hear these voices, if we can get these stories out.
All right, thank you. And we also want to thank our crew members. We want to thank Kendall, thank Sharon, thank Eric, thank Theodora, Miss M, of course, our executive director of the First Voice Apprenticeship Program, Frank, and also thank Casmi Terry and John Pralis, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. John Parolis. Thank you all. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Solidarity forever. Victory to the students, victory to the OEA. We're going to win this struggle.
Oh,
Thank you
yes.
for joining me.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.